This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 416 for Thursday, September 30th, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Ryan Murphy is here. You can find him at rmurphy on Twitter, and you can listen to him on The Gamers Inn, Zombies Ate My Podcast with our friend Lou, and Dungeons and Diapers. Ryan's been on the show a number of times. We'll have all the links to social media and stuff like that in the show notes for this episode. Welcome back, my friend. Hello.
Hello. Happy to be back. I wonder if alongside, rule number 1, don't talk about weather. Rule number 2, don't talk about the last time you were on because you forgot how long it's been. I didn't look it up beforehand, even though we did have time. But it feels like it's been a while. So I'm happy to be back. I know we've been planning through the summer to get me back on so we could talk about video games. But gosh, now I feel like it has been a while because I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was like right after you got your Xbox, maybe?
It could have been. It was probably around that. It was probably around, spring Steam sale and, that kind of thing. Looking for resources, things to play on the Xbox, which I still am, actually. And there was a recent, what was it? XCOM was the recent event early in September that happened, or was that August?
Yeah, I think it was late August. It was Gamescom, yeah. And the last time it was on was February, and it was Xbox related. So yeah, it's we're doing good, keeping it every 6 to 7 months. So
consistency is key, right?
It's not speedy consistency, but it's consistency.
Well, expectations are met, I guess. Speaking of expectations and staying true to our video game chat, which I know has kind of been dominating the Citadel Cafe as of late, but I just haven't been watching a whole lot. I've been mostly playing my entertainment recently. But I caught a Polygon article talking about the most anticipated games coming this fall. I did sort of keep my eye on the XCOM announcements and other things coming out from Nintendo Direct and whatnot, even though I don't have a Nintendo system to play anything on. I can't say I'm overly interested in a lot that's coming. A lot of the stuff that I've seen released, especially in the Polygon article that we'll have linked in the show notes, looks like it could be played on the GameCube. Like, I can appreciate that indie games have to have some lower graphic stuff, and sometimes it might even just be one person making the game. But I spend a lot of money on my Xbox Series X, and it's a very powerful system. I don't want to play something that looks like Minecraft or Human Fall Flat or like any of these really low poly, very stylized games on it. Not that they aren't good games. It's just like I feel like I'm like, why am I playing it on an Xbox Series X when I could play it on an old laptop or something? There are a few things that have caught my eye. I've certainly mentioned Forza Horizon 5 on the show before, so that's on the top of my list. Also, Halo Infinite is coming this fall, I believe. And I may give one of the new Call of Duties or the new Battlefield a try, just to have something that is going to take advantage of the hardware on the Xbox Series X. What are you looking forward to in terms of video games coming up this fall?
I think it's important to note, like, a lot of 2021 targeted games have really slipped into 2022 and beyond, just due to the pandemic. Like, a lot, and some of the games mentioned are games that were like Halo Infinite specifically was supposed to launch last year, and that had a rocky development just due to the scope of the project and having a lot of their developers work from home. And yeah, like I totally understand that, where you've bought this new piece of hardware, and I'm in the same boat, where you're playing a lot of games that are either bridging the gap between the previous generation and the current generation, so there's not that huge leap forward. And I think we have to remind ourselves that this happens. This has happened in the last couple of generations as well, where there is this like 2 year and probably going to be expanded due to the pandemic, where there is that stretch of time early in the console's lifespan where you're not hitting those same, ooh, this is really pushing the hardware. I mean, if you compare Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which launched with the PS4, to God of War 2018, there's that 4 year difference, but there's a huge leap in terms of how the game looks. But I think for me, I see Call of Duty and Battlefield, and they certainly do push the new hardware. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just me realizing that I've kind of never been really into shooters except for Halo, but I'm not like into the whole like, modern warfare war games anymore. Like they don't necessarily interest me as much, but I can appreciate that they really do push the hardware, so they are probably a good get. And I mean, with Game Pass, I am probably likely to try Battlefield because it should be as part of the EA Play trial.
Right.
You should get like 10 hours of it at the very least. So yeah, I might check that one out just due to Game Pass. I mean, a lot of these games are Game Pass, but
yeah, Forza's Game Pass. I believe Halo Infinite is going to be Game Pass. There's a number of other things that are coming out too that I have bookmarked. But yeah, like I'm looking forward to that kind of stuff. With Halo Infinite, I tried to play the first one and it was okay for the first few levels, but then eventually I kind of just fell off and just didn't get back into it. If someone's coming into the Halo series, because there are so many games, is there a jumping on point for people?
Yeah, well, you'll have to play the first three and then the spin-offs and read the books and watch the movies, TV shows. No, I'm just kidding. I think that with Halo Infinite, they are trying to create and craft a story that can be enjoyed with no prior knowledge, but also feed the fans as well in terms of like a continuation. Because there has been, a story really like Halo 1 through 3 and anything that kind of is adjacent to those experiences can probably be summarized in a 5-minute video of like, here are the highlights you're going to need to know going into the sequel trilogy, which is Halo 4, 5, and Infinite. But like 4 kind of sets a new, a tangent, and then 5 kind of goes in a different direction, and then Infinite appears to be going in another direction. So I think, yeah, you could probably jump straight into Infinite, and I think what you want to know is just who the core characters are, which would be Master Chief.
Right.
Cortana should play a large part because there was a big cliffhanger at the end of 5 in regards to her. But like as for deeper lore, I don't know, like understanding who the Covenant is, who keep popping up as bad guys, but also not bad guys. Like there's some history there with Halo. Like the Covenant are very much the bad guys in the original trilogy, and when that trilogy ends, it kind of shifts a little bit. But yeah, like I don't think you need to play the old ones. I think getting a primer. A lot of websites offer like everything you need to know about Halo in 5 minutes. I know IGN runs that series. That'd probably be a decent place to start, because returning to those old games is probably just going to put you off the new one, because they are old.
Yeah,
they're not recent. But yeah, I would advise like just getting an update. And if you're really itching to play some Halo, Halo 5 being the most recent one, it's very playable. And if you did want to start, 4 should give you. I remember when I played 4, like that was the last time there was a large gap between games. And they summarize like the key plot points that you need to know going into that one.
Right.
But 4, 5, and Infinite, you could probably, if you're really itching, you could probably skip 1, 2, and 3, as well as Reach and ODST. Still good games, but you've only got a couple months. So
yeah, my gosh,
it really
depends.
depends.
That's the other thing I find daunting as well. Like I see these titles that I know are really good, like Gears of War, another thing that's part of Game Pass. All of them are there, including the tactics one, which is not my style of game. But like, I just, you look at it like, do I start at one? Do I have to start at one? Can I jump in somewhere else? Like it's now the one thing I like about Assassin's Creed with Valhalla on my short list for something to play this fall while I wait for other things to come out because of delayed launches. Valhalla is probably something that's going to look really nice on the Xbox Series X. And I know that most Assassin's Creed games, at least now, are not like tied to one another. They are thematically in terms of how what the gameplay loop is, but like you don't need to have played Black Flag in order to understand what's happening with Valhalla, right? So
No.
that stuff is appealing, that you can kind of jump into an Assassin's Creed game and just kind of go from there. So anything on your watch list, like anything on your short list that is coming?
Well, for me, I'm really looking forward to Metroid Dread. I do have a Switch. I love the Metroid games, and the fact that we're finally getting a proper follow-up to Metroid Fusion, which was a Game Boy Advance game. Metroid Dread has been a game that's been in and out of development for the last 20 years or so. So getting this game on the Switch October 8th, I'm really looking forward to that. So like literally under a week. So it's crazy how quick October has snuck up on us. But looking forward to that one. Back for Blood, I'm sure when Lou's back on the show, he will also echo this. I'm looking forward to Back for Blood, which is a sort of a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor, same developers. And that one's going to be on Game Pass as well. And that one's out October 12th. And, there's just other little ones I'm looking forward to. But I think for me, like, I'm curious about Guardians of the Galaxy. Only because I really like the developer and I really like the source material. But I'm like, licensed game, it's really tough to tell if it's going to be a solid experience until you get reviews in your hands, right?
Mm.
So, and that would be a full price game. Like, it's not like it's something that will come to Game Pass right away. It's tough to say, but I am looking forward to Dark Pictures anthology. They usually have a new entry every year. House of Ashes is the next one. It's coming out to everything except for the Switch, and that one's out October 22nd. But it's more of a co-op. Like, it can be played co-op, but it's like a narrative choice-driven game with puzzles and stuff. And that one I played co-op last time, and it was a lot of fun to kind of go through it co-op. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that again. And it's kind of an interesting. It's like, I don't really like horror films, but this one is a really cool one in that you actually get to play through a really solid, I almost said holiday. It's not I guess it is a holiday, but not a Christmas story. It's a horror story. So it's interesting, and they're a lot of fun. There's 2 already out that you can probably pick up for next to nothing with Man of Medan and Little Hope. So if you're interested in those, I highly recommend going back because they're solid. Great animation, great acting. It's all like mocap and stuff, so they really put presentation front and center.
Man of Medan was something Megan played and talked about on the podcast. I don't remember what episode, but if people want to go to the citadelcafe.com, the search function is pretty solid. I tend to tag most things. You'll be able to find the episode, I'm sure. Because I think I might have even used cover art from that game for the title card for that show. But I do remember her talking about how much she enjoyed the story, like really story driven, like really enjoyed the acting, that kind of stuff. I'm looking at Back for Blood because that seems to be like advertised to me a lot. Probably because I played Destiny and Battlefield on the Xbox. And so it comes up as like coming soon to Game Pass and all this kind of stuff. And boy, does it look gruesome. It does not. It looks like, I've seen some still images from like the modern Doom games, but like this Back for Blood thing, I'm not sure what this thing is that I'm seeing, but it looks like it's about 2 stories tall. It's got a bunch of like things growing out of it. It looks like it might have a couple of heads. Like, it is gross. Gross looking.
It's a zombie game where I think it takes like the standard zombie and moves a little bit past that with mutations and monsters and whatnot. So it's got that sort of gore factor, and it's a 4-player co-op where you're running through with friends, and it's got full cross play, which is nice because I'm planning to play it on Game Pass, and Lou is planning to play on Steam, and which is
Nice.
awesome because I was worried, oh man, we're both so set in our ways. Like I've purchased this amount of Game Pass. There's no way I'm buying this game
On Steam,
when
yeah.
I've already invested.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it for Zamp reasons for sure. But Left 4 Dead was always one of those games that I really thought could have been taken in interesting directions with newer hardware, and they just kind of dropped it. So I'm glad they're returning to the formula.
Well, I had fun the last time we played Destiny together, so maybe include me in a possible third for Back 4 Blood, because I'll have access with Xbox Game Pass. So
Yeah,
all
yeah,
good.
no, we should totally do that because I remember Lou's really looking forward to it. He's excited to play co-op, and yeah, I much prefer to play with people I know with this game because they had a beta, and Lou and I couldn't connect over the beta weekend, so we ended up playing with just random people on the internet, and you get folks who are like just beelining it for the exit, which doesn't help because if you die, you need them to revive you, and I'd rather play with friends where I know that we're going to stick together and do the objective. We're not just going to run off and do our own thing. So
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll make a note of that, and I'll let Lou know. I'm going to be talking to him later tonight, actually. And
Cool.
I'll mention that. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a good time. Speaking of good times, we have a listener email. Not something that happens a lot here on the Citadel Cafe, but always happy when it does. We have a message from Grand277 about podcast recommendations. Dear Joel and Ryan, do you think that movies only being in theaters is a good thing since there is still a global pandemic? Are movie companies putting their customers at risk? I still love going to the movie theater, but I'm a little cautious about going. I am also a spoiled consumer with Disney Plus. Even if you think it's perfectly fine to be in theaters, can you give me a good estimation as to when it will be streamable? I'm assuming that's probably a rhetorical question aimed at like movie production companies saying like, hey, it's out in theaters, but when can I watch it on streaming? I'm going on a trip to Florida soon, and I would love to know some podcasts you like besides the Spun Chunks and the Daily Tech News Show. I know you won't let me down there. I feel sorry for the barista who has to take my long order. Sincerely, Grand277. Thanks very much for the message. Appreciate that. Do you want to start with the podcast recommendations? I can list those off pretty quick. How about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we were prepping the notes, I'm like, it'd probably be really bad if I just listed my own podcast because obviously we'll talk about those down the road. But I think if you're looking for podcast recommendations, like I pulled a few out that likely probably haven't been recommended before. But Bridgewater is a new audio drama from the Lore production company. So I think it's Aaron Mahnke. And but Bridgewater is a sort of audio drama about it's got like a little bit of like it's very Halloweeny. It's got like sort of a bit of a cult story, a bit of a Bermuda Triangle, a bit of a alien abduction type stuff. It's like about like folklore in this specific area, and it's got voice talents from it's got Will Wheaton, it's got Nathan Fillion. It's really well acted. And it's almost done, so it'd likely be complete by the time you head out to Florida, depending on how old the email is. But you could probably binge the whole thing. There's like I think 10 episodes out now, about 20 minutes each, and they're really well put together. So you could likely finish that story, depending on how long your trek is. But yeah, I recommend that one. And if you're looking for another tech podcast, I really like the Brad and Will Make a Tech Pod, which is more of like a casual conversation about technology. And they do get into like some really, nerdy tech stuff that even like for me, it's like, oh, I don't know what this is. But they talk about it in a way that's interesting and informative. And it's a lot more casual. So that one's good. And if you're looking for a funny comedy podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend is still one of my favorite comedy podcasts. And I don't watch late night stuff. I don't watch Conan O'Brien, but I really like his comedic stylings, and he's always interviewing like celebrities. I listened to one where he was talking to Daniel Radcliffe, the guy who played Harry Potter, and that was a really interesting conversation and also very funny as well. And there's a lot of good stuff with that feed, and you can kind of like go through and pick you're don't listen to all of them unless you really like Conan O'Brien, but like listen to the ones that first and foremost, listen to the ones that have actors that you're interested in, comedians that you're interested in, and that'll be a good starting point to get an idea if that podcast is for you.
For me, I've got just two, both in very different categories. Keeping true with the gaming conversation, the Gaming Careers podcast is a really good show hosted by Pete Wilkins. And he does Gaming Careers on YouTube. Does a lot of streaming gear review, does a lot of software review, some tips and tricks for people getting started into streaming, but also people that want to take it to the next level, maybe make it a side hustle, part-time job, or even a full-time job. And the Gaming Careers podcast is basically like, it's like a tech news show, but it focuses on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, like streaming platforms. What policies have changes, what features are around, things like bots that are causing problems, like what challenges are happening, in the streaming space. And really well-spoken guy. Pete's from Britain, but it's his co-host. I can't remember his co-host's name right now, but he's an American. And so there's a nice kind of like cross the pond kind of balance of culture and stuff happening there. And I really quite like it. It's a good show, and they keep it tight. Like it's a pretty professional show. They have a lot to cover every week, so there's not a lot of fluff, which is cool. The other one is the Body Nerd Show, and that is hosted by Alexandra Ellis, and you can get that at bodynerdshow.lisbon.com. Ellis is a mobility coach, so she's like a fitness professional, but think more like physio than say necessarily a personal trainer. It's all about like joint mobility, not necessarily flexibility, but mobility. And as someone that is getting back into the gym recently, experiencing some aches and pains here and there, and always wanting to take the time to do it right and see what concerns are with like what science has changed since the last time that I was training seriously. I found her account on TikTok actually, and she's very articulate. She's really fun. And the things that she talks about in the short form that I see a lot are really easy to follow. She breaks it down. She tells you the science, but it doesn't get overly complicated to like people that don't know anatomy. Like she goes, here's what this is doing, but here's what you need to know. It helps your ankles feel better, or ankle mobility or the lack of ankle mobility will affect your knees and therefore your hips and maybe even your lower back. So just because you've got lower back pain doesn't necessarily mean that your back is the problem. And so she interviews other health professionals, doctors, physiotherapists, stuff like that on her show. Really informative. She obviously knows what she's talking about, but that's the Body Nerd Show. And you can find that on any platform. It was very easy for me to find online when I heard her talk about it on TikTok. As for movies and theaters, man, I get that these films take a long time to make and cost a lot of money, and the production companies have to try and make that money back somehow. I am on the fence about like whether or not I think that theaters should be pushing movies in a pandemic. On one hand, there are really important films like Shang-Chi, and yes, it's a blockbuster Marvel movie, but it's also important for Asian representation, in superhero films and major films. It was the #1 movie in the world, maybe still is, for a number of weeks. And so that kind of stuff, like I can appreciate why that needs to go into theaters. But I'm with you, Grand, on, I really feel like they should at least inform you, like, hey, released in theaters, let's say August 25th, coming to Disney Plus November 12th. I feel like I would like to know that up front, because if it's going to be a long time and I really want to see the film, I might go to the theater. But if it's going to be a short time, or if it's a time that I don't know, like a time span that I don't know, the chances of me going to the theater are pretty slim, right? So if you want to drive me to the theater, tell me how long I have to wait. Alternatively, what I would really like is just let consumers make the choice. I'm okay for paying extra, if that's how you want to run it, then sure. It's released in theaters now. You can watch it on, well, I'll use Disney Plus again as an example. You can watch it on Disney Plus now or go to the theater, whatever you want. But in a few months' time, it'll be part of the Disney Plus, like part of your membership without any extra fees. So I understand, like the give and take there, but I think the way that in terms of pandemic safety, I don't think that falls on movie producers. I think that falls on theater owners and people running the facility to promote how they're running their facility, how they're making it safe, how, what the seating arrangements are. Are you booking seats in advance online? So you know where you're sitting and how far away you are from other people, like all that kind of stuff. Because I currently train at the gym. I'm at the gym 2 to 3 times a week, if not more. I run into way more people at the gym doing a lot of breathing than I ever would at a movie theater. But I balance that decision with the fact that it's healthy for me to go to the gym. It affects my health in a positive way. Sitting in a movie theater for 2 hours is not beneficial to me outside of just entertainment. Entertainment is low on the totem pole for me in terms of, pandemic safety reasons. So I don't see myself going back to theaters anytime soon unless there was some massive event that would bring me back, like a new Star Wars trilogy starting. If it was something like Endgame, like the end of a series of movies that I just didn't want to miss. I can sort of even see the appeal of the latest James Bond film, saying like, that's the kind of film I would really like to see in theaters. But it's just, I'm not a die-hard fan in the same way that I am with like Marvel and Star Wars and stuff like that. So because of having a nice big TV at home, I don't have a sound system, but like at least I've got a big screen. I'm more than happy to wait until things hit, the streaming services that I pay for. I like I said, I don't think it really falls on the production companies, because those, you think about movies and you think about movie stars and big production companies, but they employ a lot of people that work really hard and have to deal with a lot of safety measures and all that kind of stuff. Think about everyone behind the camera, from the people that do hair and makeup to the people that do cinematography, just people that do sound and stage dressing, like all that kind of stuff. That's a huge industry. And like I said, I don't think it's on the production companies. I think they should promote their stuff. I think it's more about production companies maybe leading the charge with like, day and date at home or in the theaters, and allowing customers to make a choice. Because I don't think movie theaters are going to go anywhere. I think the rush to movie theaters is never going to be the same. But I think that giving consumers the choice to watch it at home or go to the theater is probably the ultimate way to go. What do you think?
That's a very good point, in that it's not up to the production companies to kind of make sure you're safe. They kind of have to hand that over to the local theaters. And I think specifically here, in Ontario, Canada, where we've had, I did go to the movies. I took my kids to see the Paw Patrol movie, and that was a movie that was available to rent, but it'd been a long time since we had been to the theaters. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, when it comes to going to the movies, it is all comes down to how safe you feel and how high on the need versus want level it is. And I think there is this, I think personally, like this mental health as well, where sometimes it can be nice to watch a movie, and yes, the only place may be to watch it in theaters, but there is that experience of going to the theater and that comfort of being back in the theater. And I'm not necessarily saying like all movies you have to go see them in theater, but I like choice too. So like you have to kind of weigh that and determine like whether or not you want to go back to the theaters. Like, for example, with the Paw Patrol movie and bringing my kids, you have to wear masks the whole way through the building. And then you can take the mask off once you sit in your seat. And you can, now they've set it up where this is new to us, but specifically here, like you can see all the seats. You can preview the seats. You can tell how many tickets have been sold. As soon as you buy a seat, it blocks every seat around you, front, back, sides. So that was good. That also helped, but also you could see how busy it was going to be. I haven't seen Shang-Chi in the theaters, even though I kind of wanted to. I want to see that I like to watch the new Marvel movies, but every time I looked at the seat preview, it was quote unquote sold out. It
Right.
was a full house. Not every seat was sold, of course, because they do have to
Right. Yeah.
adhere to social distancing, but it it was still packed. Like, you're still going to be busy in the halls, you're still going to be busy in the theater. But when we saw Paw Patrol, there was like, three other families with us. There was no one around us. It was as safe can be. Like, how often they clean, I don't know, but like, again, it was a minimal risk, and the kids really appreciated it. We had a great time, and there is something to that. But I think, like, it all comes down to your comfort levels and the work that is being done by your local theater. And if you have a theater that isn't adhering to local public health guidelines and stuff, that's an issue. Is that on Disney? Probably not. It could help if Disney like stepped in and said, like, hey, make sure you follow all the rules for, the Eternals when it comes out in November, or else.
Right.
But it's also led to a negotiation of how long a movie has to stay exclusively in theaters, which has now been reduced to a minimum of 45 days. So whether Shang-Chi comes to premier access on Disney Plus before it is available to everybody on November 12th, we don't know, because that was sort of my thing. Is like, well, I think I can wait till mid-October to rent it. I think I'm comfortable with that, because yeah, like, it didn't feel like a movie. It's the same thing as Venom 2. Like, it's not a movie that I'm worried about having spoiled for me. But the new Spider-Man movie coming out in December, that's a different story. I don't want that one to be spoiled. I want to be able to enjoy it on my own terms, right? So that's also another factor to think about too. So yeah, it's tough. It is really a tough conversation. I understand that the way the movie industry is set up, it really depends on the amount of money they make at the box office, and they have not yet been able to replicate that at home, even though they have certainly tried with the $30 rentals and stuff. But at the end of the day, they haven't been able to replicate the box office at home, which is, I think, the biggest struggle. But yeah, I am so glad that our local theater has survived, because I do not want to drive an hour to go to the movies.
Oh yeah. No, there's a couple of theaters locally that they're all Cineplex. So like, dude, I would have options if I wanted to go. That's the thing that I think is the tipping point, is the cost of premium access. And again, using Disney Plus because it's just easy to talk about. That to me it's still too pricey. I agree that it's cheaper for, a family of four to do that than it is to take them all to the theater. But when you're single and it's just you spending $30 to watch a movie once, I mean, I know you have access to it after you buy access, but it's just like, that to me is just still too steep. And I think that there's that balance between what you charge and the number of people that will then do it. There's a lot of people that are not paying for premium access because it's too expensive, and they'll just wait. But if you make it nominal, I think a lot more people would be just like, yeah, I'll spend $5 and watch that early. 5 is a low example, but I would spend the equivalent of what it would cost me to go to the theater. So if it was a $12 ticket, and if it was a $12, access on Disney Plus, I'd be watching stuff the day it comes out. Why not? Spider-Man, Shang-Chi, like all that kind of stuff. I'd be like, sure, I'll spend the $12, because I would spend the $12 to go to the theater, and there's no risk to me at home. So that to me is the balancing act, and right now it's still too expensive. And again, I know for families it's cheaper, but for single people it absolutely is not.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I mean, even for me, like, even though I have like 3 kids, like, Shang-Chi being a $30 access, that's just for me, right? So and I know, like, the argument can be, well, if you go to the movies and you buy a bunch of popcorn, it gets to be $30. But like, I know that popcorn money, actually I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure the popcorn money does not go to Disney.
No, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wish there was an easier way, but again, like I've heard the arguments made that, like, a premium access at the beginning is just you're paying to watch it, and unfortunately it's just the Netflix model of everything is available to the subscription, even if it comes to theaters. It just hasn't gone through to the rest of the industry, and I don't think it ever will, because again, like, it's just they make so much money at the box office,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a game of patience and how diligent you want to be of muting keywords on Twitter,
Yeah.
and I think that's where it comes down to. So like with Shang-Chi, I basically I just embraced it, and whatever was spoiled, and that's fine. But there are certain movies where you do want to experience it for yourself. So it really comes down to, your personal sort of feelings on spoilers, and how long you want to wait to watch something. But in my mind, like, we waited a year for Shang-Chi, Venom 2, Eternals. I can wait a couple more months to watch it on Disney. But there's just so much entertainment these days that I'm content to wait if I'm not feeling comfortable about going to the theaters, right?
Moving on to what we've been watching, I have been pleasantly surprised on Disney Plus by The Bad Batch. And you're probably thinking, wait a minute, Joel, I remember you saying that you didn't like The Bad Batch. And you're right. I didn't like their implementation in the Clone Wars, but the standalone show, The Bad Batch on Disney Plus, which is about 16 episodes, half an hour cartoons, is actually really well done. I'm really happy to be proven wrong. The trailers didn't do it justice. They could have done a little bit of a better job kind of selling it. It's not as kiddie as it looks, despite the fact that there is a kid involved in the adventure. If you're not familiar, the Bad Batch is a rogue group of clones from the Clone Wars and Star Wars. They are basically genetic defects or genetically enhanced experiments that just didn't pan out. They didn't destroy the clones. They and then put them on like special ops. So think like black ops missions, that kind of stuff. Unorthodox skill sets. You've got like a guy named Wrecker. He's a big dude. So he's super strong. You've got Hunter, who's the leader. He's an excellent tracker and commander. And then there's a bunch of other people that are all involved. I don't remember all the characters' names off the top of my head. I tried looking it up on IMDb, but they don't list the individual characters. They just say that Bradley Baker just does the voices for everybody. So it's like, okay, well, that doesn't help me at all. Trying to figure out who's who. But what's nice about it, and what was so surprising about it, was the inclusion of Omega, which is the kid character that you'll see in any of the promotions. She's a clone too. So she was cloned on Kamino, like the rest of the clones, as a medical assistant. So she's there to help the Kaminoans make more clones. So she knows all about clones, how they're made, how they operate, even though she's only like 10 or something in the series. And through a series of events, the Bad Batch are on the run. And they spend the series so far, at least the first 6 episodes that I've watched, trying to evade, capture, stay low profile, but also get to the bottom of what's going on. Because one of the cool things that happens in the first couple of episodes are you are witness to the execution of Order 66, which is where the clones basically turn on the Jedi through pre-programming installed by Emperor Palpatine, who commissioned the clones, and he uses the clones to then create the Empire. So you're watching the creation of the Empire and the social implications of that on society or on the galaxy. And it's really interesting to see this side of things from like clone troopers who the order didn't go off in their brain. Or rather, not all of them. One of their members, I think his name is Bullseye. I can't remember his name. He's the sharpshooter. He's the sniper guy that I don't like, so I don't remember his name. But he, his Order 66 chip in his brain worked. No one else's did. So he goes Empire. Everybody else goes on their own. And that's like the rift that they establish early on. It's a really well done show. The animation is good. It feels like Star Wars. Like they do a really good job with like panning scenes. It's a good pace. It's a slow pace, despite the fact that there's lots of action. There's always a mission, but there's a lot of like setup. It feels like The Mandalorian, especially because when you draw the comparison that The Mandalorian is taking place just after the fall of the Empire, and this is just after the creation of the Empire. So both of these stories are happening with non-main timeline characters that are experiencing a massive shift in society from a galactic standpoint. So it's really interesting in terms of seeing how they're showing the Empire come to power and how they have to like identify with, I can't remember the name of the code, but each person has like a citizen code that they're being assigned, and you can trade in your credits for Republic credits for the new Imperial credits, and basically trying to get everybody under the same economy and everybody under the same rule, which is the, we'll say it's like the, not illusion, but it's like it's the temptation that they want to bring people under the thumb of the Empire, have everything controlled by the Empire. It's really interesting. The downside, the things that I didn't like about the introduction of the Bad Batch from the Clone Wars was the less than imaginative stereotypes. It's basically the Ninja Turtles. Like you've got, you've got the leader, Hunter, you've got the big guy, Raphael, you've got the smart guy, Donatello, you've got the funny, well, there's not really a funny guy. I guess they kind of mix that in with the big guy, but like they have these archetypes. Like Tech is the nerdy guy. He's got glasses. He's always fiddling with electronics, and he talks like a stereotypical nerd from like a 90s television show. So they've really not stretched the archetypes at all. I think again that the name Bullseye is the name of the guy that stays with the Empire. And he's a bad guy from the moment that he opens his mouth. Even before the chip turns on in his head, you just don't like him. He's seedy. He's always scowling. He talks like a snake. He always has like a whisper talk, So you're just immediately, your brain goes, bad guy. I don't care what you're going to throw me. That's the bad guy, So that kind of stuff is annoying. And Wrecker, as cool as he is as a character, I'm kind of done with the whole big dumb guy. Like, why does the muscle of the group have to be the dumb guy? I really would like to see a little bit more of a cross between, say, like the smart guy also being the muscle, or like the sharpshooter guy. Maybe he's the leader. I don't know. Like they could do a little bit more in there. But there's a lot of really cool Easter eggs. Small spoiler. One of the missions, they have to retrieve what they think is a person. I think Mochi was the name that they were given. Go get Mochi. You'll get paid when you bring Mochi back. What they realize when they get there is Mochi is a juvenile Rancor. So the Rancor monster from the main Star Wars series. And you find out at the end of the show that the person that hired them to go get Mochi is Bib Fortuna, who is Jabba the Hutt's right-hand man. So you're witnessing the retrieval of Mochi to Jabba. And in the timeline, this is all like Anakin Skywalker just turned into Darth Vader. So by the time Luke Skywalker is in his late 20s in the Return of the Jedi, you've basically got like, it's the Rancor from the Return of the Jedi that these guys just rescued from a slaving camp. Like there's little tie-ins like that they really thought through. So the Star Wars fans are going to be excited to see that kind of stuff. Whereas if you're watching it with your kids and they've got no idea what's going on, then they're just going to enjoy the episode because a fight with a juvenile Rancor is as crazy as you think it is. And like that kind of stuff has been really, really fun. But overall, I mean, I'm happy to say that I can recommend the show. I'm only halfway through. There's still opportunity for them to drop the ball. But it's much better than the Clone Wars implementation. And the heart of it is the relationship between Hunter and Omega. He becomes a father figure. They're all clones. They're all different clones. They're not the same as all the ones that are fighting in the Clone Wars. And she's in danger because clones that are not part of Order 66 or did not obey Order 66 are being hunted down and destroyed. So they're trying to protect this kid who doesn't know any better and can't protect herself because she grew up on Camino. And her naivete is not because she's dumb. She's a really intelligent kid, but she's really inexperienced. She's very sheltered. So when she wanders off on a crowded planet, it's not that she's just disobeying. She's just never been off world. So like it's all brand new. And they do a really good job of kind of like bringing the wonder of Star Wars, traveling through space, the first time you're in space, the first time you shoot a blaster. There's all this kind of cool first time stuff that you get to relive through Omega. And they do a really good job of giving you that information, but not smacking you over the head with it. It's really subtle. I would recommend it for people, especially if you liked the Clone Wars, if you liked Rebels. I think you're really going to like the Bad Batch. And I'm happy that I was wrong about my expectations for it. If you've watched the Bad Batch premiere or be introduced in the Clone Wars, just know that it's not that campy. It's a much better story. Have you watched this at all? Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I have not watched any of the sort of canon animated shows for Star Wars. Like, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I appreciate that people really do enjoy the animated, canon Star Wars stuff. But like, I just, I haven't been able to get into it. Like, I'm not as connected because it's funny. Like for me, when I look at the Star Wars animated stuff, it's like, okay, it's nice that it's connected, but it doesn't, as someone who's disconnected from the franchise, it doesn't feel like essential watching for me. Like I can watch the main stuff. I can watch the live action television shows. I just much prefer live action versus animated, although I've been watching a lot more animated stuff these days. And I feel like you can understand like the big tentpole releases without the animated stuff. But if you're a huge fan of Star Wars or whatever, insert franchise, I mean, look at What If. Like I'm enjoying What If because it's connected to the Marvel universe, but I understand those who feel like you don't have to watch it, like, because you don't. You could skip it. It feels like it's, running in parallel. You don't need to know what happens in it, but you can enjoy the ride. And I think it's the same way with Clone Wars and Bad Batch and such, where it's nice that it has those connections for huge fans. Like the Rancor scene, I can appreciate that as like, that's a really cool connection. Whereas I know a lot of people might be like, oh, do we really need to know where the Rancor came from? It's like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, it's cool to have those connections. And that's the reason these shows exist, to like fill in a bit of the gaps that maybe didn't need to be addressed, but it's nice that they are, and feel this connected world. Like I can appreciate that from afar, but I just have not been able to get into it. And I think I will say this, I do appreciate sort of the structured approach that Disney Plus allows, where I know there isn't going to be 8 seasons in a movie of Bad Batch. There's probably going to be just enough, similar to what they did with Rebels, where they had a finite amount of series. But if you look at Clone Wars, like it started on normal television. So like they kept doing seasons until they were canceled, in which they got revived, I think, by, was it Netflix? I think they brought back a season on Netflix to kind of wrap the story up.
No, it was Disney Plus.
No.
They came back on Disney Plus, yeah.
Maybe they got brought back. I think they got brought back twice.
Yeah,
now that
maybe.
I think about it. So that's the kind of thing where I've struggled to get into it, because it's like, yeah, there are 8 seasons, but there's like 5.5 seasons of really good content there, and it's like, I much prefer this focused Disney Plus approach, where we're getting, here's 3 seasons and we're ending it, which I think is what they did with Rebels, right?
Yeah, the thing with Clone Wars now, because like you said, it's that old television model, Cartoon Network stuff. Eventually Disney, not Disney Plus. I can't remember what they called their Disney TV channel, but
Disney XD.
XD, thank you. Yeah. So with that stuff, the nice thing about Clone Wars is that you can go to like the Wikipedia website or Clone Wars fan stuff, and you can just get like a list of key essential episodes. So before, and this is a big spoiler for anybody have you seen season 2 of Mandalorian?
I did, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, folks, this is a season 2 spoiler for Mandalorian. So if you haven't, just close your eardrums for just a second. Ahsoka is in season 2, and it had been a while, and I wanted to watch the season 7 of Clone Wars before season 2 of Mandalorian. And so I didn't want to go back and watch all of Clone Wars, but it's been a really long time. So I looked up like key Ahsoka moments in not just Clone Wars, but key Ahsoka moments in Clone Wars, Rebels, and then season 7 of Clone Wars actually focuses quite heavily on Ahsoka. So there was a really cool ability to go watch like a handful of episodes and kind of refresh your brain, or even if you're new to the series, just skip all the kiddie droid episodes and all that kind of stuff that's meant to fill the 21 episodes of a television season, and just focus on the stuff that you're interested in. So that kind of stuff is cool. There's certainly a lot more in Bad Batch for people that are big Clone Wars fans. There's callbacks, there's other characters from Clone Wars that are like fan favorites that are certainly making appearances in Clone Wars. I only recognize some. The rest are kind of like over my head. But everything else about it is pretty good so far. Has there been anything on your small screen the last little while that you want to share?
It's funny I say the reason I kept saying canon Star Wars animated television is because I did watch a little bit of, I think I'm halfway through Star Wars Visions. I ended up watching, I think, through episode 5. So I by no means have completed it, but I have watched the first half. And I was really intrigued by Star Wars Visions when it was announced because it was more of an anthology series where they were sort of exploring the anime art style and handing over the franchise to a bunch of different studios, which results in varying, degrees and animation styles within the anime styling focused on Star Wars. And I gotta say, I really loved the first episode, which is more of like a samurai film style. Like, I don't watch a lot of anime, so I don't know the specific styling, but like it has a very specific style to it, and they adhere to it throughout that episode with the more black and white animation style with like colors popping through, like key colors of the lightsabers and different, I think kyber crystals, I think is what was going on there. But I accidentally, when you cue it up, it started in Japanese, and I figured that was just the way I had to watch it, which I'm sure some people would prefer to watch it, Japanese with subtitles. But I did eventually switch it over to English, and I got a chance to watch the first episode twice. And I got to say, it's a really interesting, Star Wars. I've never seen Star Wars like this before, and I think that's what is most exciting about Visions. And by no means I'm going to sit here and say every episode is fantastic. I think the second episode, while felt very anime, it felt within the style of anime, but it was not my style of television I usually watch, but I could appreciate it, for what it was. But it was like, I think it was like the band one where...
Yeah, the two that you're talking about. The Duel is episode 1. Yeah. And Tatooine Rhapsody is the one about a Jedi that goes undercover and joins a musical group. And I agree with you. I've only watched the first 2. I haven't gone on to watch the other ones yet. I do plan on it. The Duel is visually stunning, like really interesting style. I like, and I agree with your point to seeing Star Wars in a new way and allowing them to do kind of like whatever they want. Not that they can't do whatever they want with special effects, but when you're doing live action, there's a certain amount of believability that you kind of have to keep in there. And with animation, you can kind of push that even farther. The thing that I didn't understand about the first one was the story wasn't very well communicated. You have this samurai that's traveling from town to town, and he battles the evil, Sith that attacks the town, but you don't get any other story as to who he is, why he's doing what he's doing, nothing. And that might be a nod to that style of storytelling, or those kinds of films. But I wasn't a big fan of that lack of information. But everything else was fine. But I mean, the Duel kind of, in the title, it just kind of tells you it's just the fight. There's not really much going on beyond. It's mostly that 15 minutes. It's mostly lightsaber battle, which is very well done.
Yeah, I think the idea behind that one is they do call him the Ronin, and again, I'm not as well
Mhm.
versed in samurai films, but essentially he appears to be like a Sith hunter, and he was Sith or uses the Sith lightsaber to kind of like keep his enemies, catch his enemies off guard. Like it's hard to say, but like I think that one's animation style is really cool. All I'll say about episode 3 is like I don't think that's how lightsabers work, but I appreciate the animation. It is
Yeah.
really cool. And I think that's the thing. Like if you're obviously we all know those folks who are like diehard Star Wars fans, but like they hold it to a specific rule set. You have to throw that rule set out because there are episodes like episode 3 that basically take Star Wars and just like move it in a completely different direction, and it very much lean into the anime style. But I think episode 5, and again I won't go into spoilers, but episode 5 I think is called The Ninth Jedi, and it tells a very interesting, grounded, complete story from beginning to end that feels very much like it could be placed within Star Wars. And every other episode really that I've watched so far feels like, okay, this is a Star Wars adjacent story, like a parallel story that's happening based on this studio's sort of style. But episode 5 feels like this is done in their style, but is a story that adheres to the playbook, that Disney probably gave them and said, look, if you want to use it, by all means, but if you don't, it's all good. Here are the sound files. You're all set. And I think episode 5 really represents like a real a real connection to the Star Wars lore and canon, and feels like a really good, it's playing both parts really well. Like it's a great anime, but it's also a great Star Wars.
I'm looking forward to seeing the rest, despite Tatooine Rhapsody not really being something that I enjoyed. It's basically like it's like a musical where the band plays songs and they finally get to play for Jabba at the pod racing event. But the thing that really got me is that they play the entire song. Like they don't just kind of start into a song, do a verse, and then they cut to the next scene. It really is like a music video where the entire song is part of the short. And I fast forwarded through it and I missed nothing. Like that kind of stuff just wasn't my thing. It reminds me of the experiences I used to have when I would go to animation festivals when I was working in the animation industry, where you're in a theater, you're going to watch 5 to 10 short animations, and you don't have a fast forward button. You're going to have to sit through some of these artsy films that may or may not look good, may or may not be, making statements that you either want to see, agree with, or whatever. And it was always hit or miss. Like you would literally only ever like, 1 or 2 out of the 5 or 10 that you're being presented. It felt kind of like paying your dues a little bit in terms of making sure that you're opening your eyes to like a wider variety of styles of animation and culture and stuff. But at least with Star Wars Visions, I can just say like, you know what, this one isn't for me. I can just probably fast forward a bit and see what's up and then move on. I am looking forward to The Ninth Jedi because I remember seeing that in the trailer and thinking like, okay, that looks like it might be a little bit more of a serious take on it. So I'm definitely going to finish the series, but I will be keeping my thumb over the fast forward button for stuff that I'm not super into. Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is brought to you by you. If you would like to support the show, we are 100% listener supported. If you get value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server. That server is shared with my Twitch channel as well as my personal Patreon, so there's lots of people in there. And of course, you can enjoy benefits like a website credit and thanks, and of course, bonus episodes when we have a chance to record them. Patron count is at 25. I checked that this morning. That's steady on from last week. If you would like to be 26, then visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe and consider joining today. Normally, this is where, we share something cool or fun or engaging. Sometimes I'll share some green tech, some environmentally cool thing that's happening. But in Canada today, it is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The day honors the lost children and survivors of residential schools and their families and communities. It's a public commemoration of the tragic and painful history of ongoing impacts of residential schools and a vital component of the reconciliation process. If you're not familiar with residential schools in Canada, we'll have a link to canada.ca and the website for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the show notes. Another link in the show notes will be the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, which is a local community center and outreach here in Nova Scotia. The Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Society is a nonprofit, board-governed organization that currently operates 9 core community programs. It is one of 119 friendship centers across Canada. So for people looking to either donate to a worthy cause, look up information about how to participate and educate yourself around the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, we will have links in the show notes for that kind of stuff. And Ryan, you had another link that you wanted to share as well.
I think there's obviously a lot of great organizations you can donate to for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But one that's come across my desk was the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. It's a Canadian charity, and it's popped up a lot. I know it's a lot of businesses are sort of donating proceeds to this organization. So if you are looking for a Canadian-wide organization that you're looking for something to donate to, this is a good one that's been highly recommended. But obviously, there's lots of options, and really just educating yourself. It's a core thing that needs to be done in terms of this day. So I think donating is great, educating yourself is great, and I think these links here will be a really great place to start. I think the Canada.ca link offers a lot of great resources for you to check out. So definitely take a look.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Ryan and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email the show at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find us by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you'd like to share the podcast with a friend, word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. Just tell friends about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. Check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. Looking at a busy news cycle the next little while as more snapshots are coming out. And we're looking at a Minecraft live event on October 16th. So more news about Minecraft coming down the tubes in October. Today, I will point you towards twitch.tv/JoelDuggan, where I stream Satisfactory, Minecraft, and a variety of other things. Going into October, who knows, maybe one of these new video games will catch my fancy and we'll be streaming that too. Ryan, where can people find you, the work that you do, and all the fun stuff?
So you can catch my podcasts at tgistudios.com. There's The Gamers Inn, which is a general gaming podcast. Zombies Ate My Podcast, which I do with your co-host Lou about zombies. And Dungeons and Diapers, which is a show I do with Crofton Steers. We talk about raising kids and also a lot of geeky stuff too. So if you enjoy conversations about Star Wars and Mario and all that fun stuff, it's a great place to listen. And, we mentioned, I think at the top of the show, Extra Life is back. I'm doing a campaign to raise funds for Sick Kids Foundation out of Toronto. It's a Children's Miracle Network hospital. You can donate to my campaign at bit.ly/extraliferyan. Part of Extra Life is playing games to raise funds for these charities. And I've got a couple of events coming up, including we're going to be playing Marvel Avengers on Friday, October 15th with the Dungeons and Diapers crew. We're going to be starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find us streaming live at twitch.tv/RyanMurphyCA. And a couple other events happening throughout October and November. Definitely check out my page. I'll have all those events listed, but we're going to be playing Dark Pictures Anthology, the new one that I mentioned earlier, House of Ashes. We're going to be doing some Halloween stuff. And, of course, game day is November 6th, so there's going to be a big stream that day as well. So lots of fun to be had. And like I said, every dollar you donate goes to Sick Kids Foundation out of Toronto, which is a Children's Miracle Network hospital.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.